Picture a boulevard where each residence once commanded the price of an entire industrial plant. Grand marble steps, sparkling crystal fixtures, chauffeurs idling by every entrance. It stood as Detroit's wealthiest avenue. Millionaire's Row, home to automotive magnates and ruthless financiers. Being raised in such a place meant you controlled the metropolis. Yet glance at it now. Those identical exteriors marred by shattered panes. A neighborhood that rang with jazz melodies and joyful voices has devolved into a pathway lined with charred estates, spray-painted walls, and overgrown brush. Officials label it the inevitable downturn of urban life. Yet beneath this shadow lurks a different tale. Avarice, enforced racial divides, red-lined lending charts, peculiar blazes that ignited right when proprietors sought payout from policies. This goes beyond mere aging structures. It's an account of the folks displaced from Detroit's priciest thoroughfare and the opportunists who profited from its demise. Even now, amid the wreckage, certain dwellings endure, and occasionally after dark, a glow flickers on. As though a sentinel remains vigilant over Millionaire's Row's hidden truths. What truly doomed Detroit's grandest avenue? The passage of years, economic turmoil, or a deliberate scheme that nobody dares voice. Chapter 1. Night Tour Through a Fractured Boulevard. The excursion kicks off at twilight, with the heavens holding a subtle azure hue and the lamps along the road just beginning to hum. Jamal, a mid-30s architect, positions himself under a sputtering lamppost on Woodward Avenue. Trailing him, a cluster of 6 visitors huddles close, smartphones aloft, their light rays slicing slim paths into the deepening shadows. This marks the remnants of Detroit's legendary route of opulence, a segment of pavement where a mere address signified triumph achieved. They proceed at a leisurely pace. Jamal gestures toward a vacant plot to the left. Overgrown plants thrust upward from fissured pavement. A corroded wire barrier slumps, enclosing bare ground. That spot held the Henderson Mansion, he explains. 40 rooms erected in 1895, vanished by 1978. The visitors whisper among themselves. One captures an image of the void, as if aiming to frame a structure long absent. On the opposite side, one edifice shines brightly. Golden illumination pours from lofty panes. Tunes waft outward, perhaps jazz or blues. The building looms large in stone and masonry. Its frontage has been meticulously refurbished and polished. A subtle placard announces the Millionaire's Table, a dining spot nestled within the former retreat of a timber tycoon. Underscore quote, underscore two, underscore Jamal notes. His tone blends satisfaction with a deeper weight, perhaps contentment or weariness from repeating the narrative so often. They press onward northward. The roadway broadens. Additional barren patches appear amid sporadic post-war constructions. A filling station, a self-storage unit, a closed health center bearing weathered signage above the entry. The built environment offers no coherent narrative. It resembles a photo hacked apart with shears, most elements excised, random pieces adrift in blank areas. Jamal halts before another barrier. Unlike the last, this encircles an actual presence, a manor or its lingering shell. 3 levels of masonry rise, openings bordered with sheets. The rooftop dips low, tags of graffiti ascend the base. Still, the framework persists. The imposing portal, the arched projections of glass, the sculpted stone details that formerly proclaimed riches too vast for words. Quote, 3 Jamal murmurs. Quote 4. He holds back the fuller picture for now, how he was raised on tales of this avenue, how his grandmother commuted by bus each dawn, passing these abodes en route to tidying another's lavish abode in some other affluent district. How his dad led him here in childhood, declaring, "This is our Millionaire's Row." implying Detroit's collective heritage, a slice of grandeur once seemingly accessible to all, despite few ever residing within. The participants snap their pictures. A voice inquires whether the place is spectral. Jamal grins and delivers the classic apparition yarn. The departed wood magnate who allegedly roams the vacant corridors after midnight, hunting his squandered wealth. But his gaze repeatedly returns to the boarded-up frontage. The true spectral element is more straightforward, an avenue that lost sight of its fortune, a metropolis that gradually learned to avert its eyes. The outing wraps up beside his vehicle. Attendees express gratitude, slip devices away, and drift to their rides. Jamal retrieves his smartphone. 3 unopened messages appear. The uppermost bears an unfamiliar municipal sender. Header: Notice of demolition proposal, 4510 Woodward Avenue. He leaves it sealed, for the moment. He lingers in the chill evening breeze, eyes fixed on that final manor. That final mansion, the one that endured blazes, bankruptcies, and years of utter neglect. Jamal's phone buzzes once more. The email climbs back to the forefront, unread. For the first time during his many tours, he questions whether sharing tales of decline suffices, or if he should finally attempt to halt the inevitable conclusion. Chapter 2. When Woodward served as the red carpet. To grasp what draws Jamal's eye to that forsaken estate, one must travel back to the era when Woodward Avenue wasn't lined with specters, but buzzed with newcomers. It's 1890. Detroit expands quicker than nearly every other U.S. city. Wealth floods from logging, steel production, and the emerging auto industry, destined to transform the globe. The tycoons amassing this fortune seek a spot to flaunt their ascent to the world. They select Woodward. The boulevard stretches broad and shaded by trees, near enough to the city's core for ease, yet distant enough to escape the smog and clamor. Plots remain available. Urban growth surges northward. This is prime territory for constructing if you aim to silently proclaim your success. The initial grand homes emerge swiftly. Constructed from rock and masonry, rarely timber. Lumber suits modest dwellings. These structures demand permanence. They convey heft. They're crafted to declare __6__A. Particularly vast one materializes in 19,002. Just the base demands weeks of toil. Teams excavate far into the Michigan soil, cast heavy cement, position enormous stone slabs using ropes and winches. The structure ascends 3 complete levels. Indiana limestone sheathes the front. Vermont marble shapes the imposing stairway. Intricately etched oak adorns the study. Leaded glass panes ship in boxes from a Chicago atelier. Expenses are said to exceed $200,000. For perspective, a proficient mill hand in Detroit might make around $600 annually. This one residence equates to about 333 times that worker's yearly pay. The proprietor goes by Holbrook. His given name vanishes in spotty archives. His occupation noted merely as auto components production. He's far from the wealthiest on the block, not by a long shot. Yet he's affluent enough to rank with the elite. The property boasts 40 chambers. A dance hall spans the upper level. Maid and butler quarters occupy the top floor. A stable at the rear, eventually converted for cars rather than steeds. Radiators warm the interiors. Electric bulbs illuminate all key spaces. A rarity, as much of Detroit clings to gas lamps. Such opulence is commonplace. Along Woodward, comparable builds proliferate. The Wilson residence, the Crawford property, the Merrick dwelling, each surpassing the prior in scale. Every master vying subtly to eclipse the adjacent, perhaps with an added alcove, a grander portal, exotic flooring over domestic, an extended approach, a steeper gable. By 1915, the shift concludes. Woodward Avenue, particularly from Grand Boulevard to Milwaukee Street, earns acclaim as Michigan's premier residence in the press. Horse-drawn rigs yield to Pierce Arrows and Packards. Outdoor soirees overflow manicured grounds. Festive evenings cast glows from panes onto the drifts. Residing here signals triumph. An invitation here implies significance. Employment here tells another tale. The thoroughfare transcends mere asphalt. It embodies a declaration. Riches amassed, showcased, protected. These estates consume in fuel and heating one season more than typical households earn in half a decade. Yearly levies surpass what wage earners spend on lodging for 12 months. Few in these echelons challenge it. It's viewed as inherent. The industrialists who forged Detroit's plants and smelters merit such grandeur. Their spouses merit salons for dancing, their offspring merit polished steps, personal educators, and existences shielded from urban harshness. The avenue evolves into an emblem. Mention Woodward Avenue in elite gatherings, and it refers not to the full expanse, but this concise segment, Millionaire's Row, where victory seems assured from the outset. What goes unspoken, what glossy columns omit, is the true sustainers of these abodes. That narrative unfolds on altogether separate avenues. Chapter 3. The Hidden Thoroughfare Beyond the Facade. These estates don't operate solo. Dawn barely breaks when trolleys cram. They clatter northward on Woodward. From southern districts where Detroit's laborers truly dwell, African-American clans from the eastern quarters, newcomers from Europe, Poles, Germans, Irish from the western. They pack the hard seats, carrying meal tins, bound for estates they'll never claim. The identical period, the identical route, yet an entirely alternate lens. At the Hullbrook estate, the domestic crew enters via the rear door. The domestic staff at the Hullbrook estate includes a cook, a pair of housemaids, a laundress who visits every other week, a gardener, and a chauffeur quartered in a cramped space over the carriage house. The head count fluctuates based on the time of year and the whirl of social events. Yet one principle remains unwavering. Affluent households require unseen labor. And that labor blends into the background. This hidden framework defines Millionaire's Row. Ornate front stairways serve the proprietors and their visitors. Steep rear passages are reserved for employees. Lavish reception halls sparkle beneath crystal fixtures. Sculleries bake in the sweltering warmth of warmer months. Imposing foyer floors aim to dazzle callers. Attic quarters for the help feature pitched roofs, flimsy partitions, and tiny panes that scarcely budge. Compensation offers reliability, though it's hardly generous. One of the housemaids could take home around $8 weekly. An expert cook might draw $12. Schedules run 6 days strong, extending to 7 amid peak entertaining periods. They navigate spaces brimming with valuables that eclipse their annual earnings. They polish pieces priced beyond what their kin shell out for housing over 12 months. Grumbling stays rare. Such positions outshine factory drudgery, dodge the perils of ironworks, and provide steadier prospects than sporadic gigs. For African-American employees in particular, tending to elite residences marks a scarce route to consistent pay in a metropolis where countless bosses refuse to even consider them. Yet the boundary stands sharp and unyielding. Decades on, Jamal's grandmother recounted these realities in a straightforward tone, resigned perhaps, but free of resentment or false hopes. She toiled just blocks off in the Boston Edison area, home to even grander spreads owned by auto barons. She had acquaintances laboring along Woodward. The guidelines applied universally. Folks didn't stroll by those properties idly, she noted. You either served inside or had no place anywhere near. The help hail from districts bearing other labels: Black Bottom, Paradise Valley, Hamtramck. Blocks lined with modest dwellings huddled tight, often subdivided into multiple dwellings where households split cooking areas and lavatories, and housing costs devour earnings with slim alternatives in sight. These areas earn no nods in the glossy columns that fate Millionaire's Row. Print accounts lavish details on lawn soirees, coming-out galas, and chilly season bashes. They skip the souls who prepared the meals, who mopped the dance floors clean, who ironed the evening finery, burnished the tableware, and stoked the fuel stoves against Michigan's harsh colds. Such erasure isn't accidental. It's woven into the very fabric. The opulence showcased on Woodward depends on toil kept firmly concealed. The dream of seamless riches thrives only when the toil vanishes from view. Come 1920, this dynamic has solidified. Millionaire's Row gleams like a flawless theater backdrop, radiant and pristine. The laborers function as backstage crew, vital yet forever overlooked. Trolleys ferry them inward at first light and whisk them out post-sunset, reinforcing the mirage that fortune materializes on its own, demanding input solely from the privileged. This setup endures across years. The estates endure, the gatherings persist, the trolleys trace familiar rails. Still, tremors brew underneath. Financial strains and racial frictions mount unseen strains. The avenue, so seemingly enduring and robust, proves more brittle than its residents care to concede. And, upon its eventual fracture, the laborers bear the initial brunt. Chapter 4. The correspondence that upends it all. The excursion concludes. The avenue falls still once more. Jamal settles into his vehicle, motor silenced. The console's illumination bathes his palms in a gentle radiance. His gaze fixes on his device. The message lingers, untouched. The header looms across the display like an omen. Notice of demolition proposal, 45,510 Woodward Avenue. That location rings familiar. It's the Holbrook house, the final survivor. His digit pauses above the surface. He's encountered alerts of this sort previously, or at minimum caught whispers of them amid the conservation networks he hovers near peripherally. They tend toward courtesy, laden with official jargon, and deliver an understated verdict. The wording rarely varies. Compromised integrity. Restoration costs too steep. Optimal land utilization calls for clearing the current edifice. In his mind, it boils down to, "We're raising it." He selects and reads the note. It's concise. A tear-down application has been submitted by Great Lakes Storage Solutions. The building at 4510 Woodward Avenue qualifies as hazardous. Community input window stays active for 30 days. Visuals of the intended substitute follow. Jamal clicks the initial file. Sleek panels of glass and metal, sharp angles, a contemporary storage depot, rising 4 levels, equipped with temperature-regulated spaces and round-the-clock entry. The depiction captures it at twilight. Hallways aglow in subtle hues, appealing in that sleek, functional manner of today's utilitarian structures. Sleek, impartial, utterly severed from its surroundings. No trace of the Holbrook residence shows in the picture. It's vanished entirely. No trace remains. Not a hint of its shadow. Overwritten, buried under pavement, wiped from existence. He lingers there, phone clutched in his grip. Vehicles stream along Woodward. A bus growls past, its cabin glow harsh under fluorescent bulbs. Passengers gaze toward their destinations. His mind drifts to his grandmother riding those early streetcars, to his father who once led him to this very section when he was around 10. They paused on the pavement, his dad's palm steady on his shoulder. The mansion stood vacant by then, its paint flaking and frame drooping, yet it retained a grandeur, still upright. "This formed our Millionaire's Row," his father remarked. Our, as in Detroit's, something he viewed as the city's shared legacy. Despite its creation by elites who barred most locals from entering, an electrician by trade, his father stayed grounded, hardly one to wax poetic about architecture. Yet he eyed that structure with a depth beyond any diagram. "Your great-grandfather wired several of these back in their prime," he mentioned, barred from the main door, but intimate with the hidden wiring throughout. Too immature at the time, Jamal missed the layers in those words, the blend of achievement and exclusion, the irony of crafting splendor you'd never inhabit. That resonates with him today. He shuts the email, switches to his contacts list. He scans until spotting a number untouched for months. Detroit Historical Preservation Alliance. He'd encountered their group at a conference the prior year. They offered a business card, urging him to connect if he craved more than weekend tour leading and storytelling. He hadn't followed up. Guiding walks stays manageable. You escort folks through vanished eras, recounting vanishings and specters in a controlled manner. You gesture to barren plots, describe former occupants. Listeners murmur sympathetically, perhaps capture an image, then depart. The terrain endures unchanged, but challenging a wrecking crew head-on, that's a different arena. It involves boardrooms, submissions, public setbacks, a conviction in potential victory. Jamal had abandoned such optimism ages back, yet his thumb hovers, then presses dial. The line trills once, twice. A voice responds. Preservation Alliance, Maria speaking. Jamal inhales. Hello, I'm Jamal Williams. I run historical walks along Woodward Avenue. I've got a tear-down alert for 4510 Woodward, and I'm not sure. Perhaps I'd like to act on it. Silence hangs briefly. Then, could you stop by our office tomorrow morning? Yes, he replies. I can make it. Chapter 5. Those who persist. The space feels more compact than Jamal anticipated. A single room upstairs in a weathered commercial spot by Eastern Market. Brick walls bare and adorned with framed shots. Grand homes, playhouses, sanctuaries. Some lost, others clinging to life. A scuffed meeting table, chairs in disarray, cartons of files piled aside, tagged by district, Brush Park, Corktown, Boston Edison, Woodward Corridor. Two figures greet him. The elder, perhaps 70, her gray locks neatly bundled. She extends a hand. Catherine Moore. I've guided preservation excursions since 1983. The other, in her early 30s, dressed in sensible office attire, bearing the weary gaze of low-paid overtime. Maria Chen. I'm the volunteer lawyer. I handle the legal battles when funds allow. They settle in. Catherine fills mugs from a flask with coffee. A modest ritual offering warmth amid tough realities. Walk us through the Hull Brook house, she prompts. Jamal recounts the details. Constructed in 1902, its first resident supplied components for the emerging automobile sector. Roughly 40 chambers, a limestone exterior, marble steps, vacant from the late 1980s onward, sealed shut, gradually crumbling, though its form endures with strength, the sole remaining estate on that segment of Woodward. And now, Great Lakes Storage aims to raise it. Maria notes she's already accessed the permit application on her computer. They acquired the site 6 months prior, all cash. They're pressing ahead, swiftly. Can we halt them? Jamal inquires. The women exchange a look, not utter despair, yet far from optimistic. A seasoned pragmatism. Possibly, Catherine responds deliberately. The core issue is ramping up the costs until they explore alternatives. She spreads out the map. Detroit boasts certain heritage zones with solid safeguards requiring permissions and amplifying local input. Boston Edison qualifies, sections of Indian Village too. The stretch by the Detroit Institute of Arts along Woodward, but 45,510 Woodward falls just beyond that boundary. The boundaries for the historic district had been established long ago, leaving this segment of Millionaire's Row on the unprotected side of the line. It wasn't by chance, Maria points out. Those boundaries were set back when these homes were already struggling, when the neighborhood had become predominantly black and impoverished. Preservation wasn't anyone's priority. So we're short on legal options, Jamal inquires. Pretty much, Maria concedes. We could submit complaints during the public review phase. We might draw media attention, build community momentum by highlighting the structure's unique historical significance. Perhaps we delay the process until another purchaser emerges, though that's unlikely. Catherine shifts ahead, resting her elbows on the surface. After 4 decades in this field, here's my insight. Not every structure can be preserved. Even with flawless efforts, defeats happen. Yet occasionally, rarely, but it occurs. You create such a stir that builders find collaboration simpler than confrontation. She gestures at a framed image hanging nearby, an elegant Victorian residence meticulously revived as a boutique inn. We forfeited a dozen properties on that stretch, she notes, but we preserved this one. That's the balance. And here's the thing. It counts. Weddings fill its weekends. Visitors arrive with children in tow. It endures thanks to a handful of resolute individuals who wouldn't allow it to fade away unnoticed. Jamal examines the photo, then the stacks of documents, and finally the pair of women before him, who persist in their efforts despite constant rejections. What steps should I take? He wonders. Maria pushes a document toward him. Begin here. It's an official protest against the razing. Put your signature on it. We'll submit it in the morning. Jamal scans it swiftly. The jargon is thick, yet the essence shines through. This edifice holds importance. Its past does too. This demolition isn't inevitable. He adds his signature below. The act seems both insignificant and monumental, a mere mark on paperwork, the initial move in a battle he's likely to forfeit. But after years of merely recounting vanished histories, he's now working to halt the impending wipeout. Chapter 6. The Golden Mile. The protest gets submitted. The vigil starts. Jamal devotes more hours to repositories than to tours, visiting the Central Detroit Public Library branch, the Burton Historical Collection, and the Walter P. Reuther Library at Wayne State University. He's hunting for evidence. Images, records, whatever, could demonstrate the Brooke House's full salvage value. Yet he uncovers a sharper view of the irrecoverable losses. Perched at a microfilm machine, he flips through vintage urban directories and detailed Sanborn fire insurance maps. Those maps, meticulously detailed and color-marked, outline each edifice's layout, materials, and elevation. He locates Woodward Avenue from 1910. The crowding shocks him. Row upon row of grand residences. The Holbrook property appears there, tinted pink to denote brick build, 3 levels high and freestanding, flanked by comparable estates. The Henderson place lies southward, the Wilson property northward, the Crawford residence opposite. He retrieves his tablet, loads a current aerial image, and positions it next to the illuminated microfilm display. Over 50% of those estates have vanished, utterly, replaced by asphalt expanses, fuel stops, barren lots choked with sumac and ailanthus growth. A smattering of post-war commercial structures, now weary and anachronistic. The terrain has been scrubbed clean and redrafted, but the revision lacks flow or harmony. He snaps a shot of the overlay and shares it in the chat with Catherine and Maria. Catherine responds promptly. This captures our battle. Not merely a single dwelling, but the methodical obliteration of a complete avenue's character. Jamal presses on. He extracts social columns from the Detroit Free Press and Detroit News. The reports follow a familiar pattern. Event invitations, society dance recaps, exhaustive rosters of garden gathering attendees. The prose blooms with flattery, designed to court the elite. Still, amid the polish, the contours of a vanished era emerge. A holiday gathering at the Holbrook estate, December 1912. Roughly 200 attendees. Entertainment from a 12-member ensemble. Supper at the stroke of midnight. The piece enumerates the notables. Auto industry leaders, financial clans, the mayor, an out-of-town state legislator. These weren't mere affluent dwellers. They were Detroit's power brokers. This avenue embodied that influence. Strategic calls forged amid cognac and secluded studies. Entry, strictly guarded. Residency here meant influencing urban fate. Exclusion meant inhabiting the fallout. He uncovers 1970s architectural assessments when early advocates attempted to catalog survivors. By that point, numerous estates had fallen to wrecking balls or been subdivided into workplaces and rooming facilities. The Holbrook House remained a home, though converted into multiple units. The report from the survey highlights the building's declining state and neglected upkeep, yet it emphasizes the robust structural features and its status as one of the premier surviving instances of early 20th century homes along Woodward Avenue. 4 decades back, at least one person saw its potential for preservation, and today it endures, hanging on by a thread. Jamal eases into his seat. The room feels cozy. Golden rays of light illuminate the space, casting a warm glow on the faces of the scholars. The air is filled with the gentle hum of conversation as they engage in lively discussions about the latest research findings. The atmosphere is one of intellectual curiosity and shared excitement as they delve into the complexities of their work. The room feels cozy. Golden rays of late-day sun stream in via high panes, collecting in soft pools across the work surfaces. He reflects on his guided walks, on pausing before empty parcels and declaring, "Right here rose the Henderson estate." How distant that sounds. Just a label, a timeline, a dwelling that seems fabricated now since few can envision it clearly. Yet these diagrams and snapshots bring it to life. They reveal the vastness of what the city allowed to fade. Not via some inevitable force of nature, but via choices from particular individuals who prioritized asphalt expanses over grand estates, who valued warehouses over history. His device vibrates. A message from Maria. Ready for a meet-up tomorrow? Strategy session needed. The builders, rushing the permit process. Jamal replies swiftly. "Count me in." He captures the visuals, collects his papers, and steps into the fading dusk. The battle has just kicked off, and he senses how readily defeat could come. Still, his thoughts return to those charts, the dense array of peaks that once crowned this boulevard, a thoroughfare that felt complete back then. Perhaps that vision merits the struggle, even in defeat, even if all he achieves is forcing others to confront the erasure. Chapter 7. A Fictional Household. Authentic Trends. To grasp the street's fate, one must know its residents. The past is fragmented. The Holbrook surname appears in municipal listings and land deeds. Yet the clan itself rarely left intimate traces. No journals, no bundle of correspondence, only scraps. A wedding announcement in one spot, a corporate registration elsewhere, a passing mention in a social update. Thus, Jamal resorts to a technique common among scholars. He constructs a mosaic. Drawing from verified accounts of comparable households on parallel avenues, he weaves them into a single illustrative existence. The Holbrooks emerge as a plausible invention drawn from genuine rhythms. The family head, whom we'll name Robert Holbrook, reaches Detroit during the 1880s. An engineer schooled in Massachusetts, he's drawn westward by job prospects. He begins as a drafter for an initial auto components firm. The sector is nascent, chaotic, full of opportunity. He excels in his role. He secures a patent for a simple upgrade to gear mechanisms. It doesn't revolutionize anything, but it's effective. His employer implements it. Soon competitors do too. He strikes licensing agreements. Payments start rolling in. By 1900, he holds equity in the outfit. By 1902, he's affluent enough to build a residence on Woodward Avenue. The property isn't the grandest there, but it's substantial. Roughly 40 chambers, up-to-date fixtures, ample room for an expanding household. He and his spouse already have 3 kids, with another impending. This cycle repeats across the records Jamal examines. The pioneers accumulate the wealth, their offspring inherit it. The estate stands as tangible evidence of ascent, of breaching into Detroit's elite circle. He envisions the routines within its confines. Beyond the elegant soirees noted in the press, the hidden customs. Youngsters sneaking rides on the polished railing unseen. The chef, toiling in the stifling lower-level galley. The driver buffing the Packard in the stable. Chilly dawns with frost clouding the lofty glass. Warm nights when the clan sips Java outdoors, gazing at the avenue. Such specifics aren't recorded, but they ring true. Affluent clans followed set patterns. The home's design dictated their days. Domestic staff enabled their ease. Robert Holbrook probably expects his abode to last through ages, that his descendants will navigate those halls, that the avenue remains unchanged, an enduring emblem of triumph. Yet, finances ignore personal designs. In the 1920s, automobile manufacturing merges. Minor players get absorbed by giants. Rivalry turns fierce. Certain lineages grow richer still. Others maintain their ground. A handful begin to falter, sliding from prosperity to adequacy to strain. In Jamal's imagined tale, the Holbrooks settle into that central tier, affluent but stagnant. Their assets rest in a venture gradually outpaced by the sector's evolution. The offspring mature. The oldest boy joins the firm, yet misses his sire's technical flair. The girls wed and depart, one bound for New York, the other for Chicago. The grand residence starts to seem excessively spacious for its remaining occupants. This follows a common trajectory. The offspring of the second generation frequently miss the drive that forged the wealth. They receive the estates without the pressures that sparked innovation. They preserve what exists, yet they fail to expand it. In the 1930s, Robert Holbrook grows elderly. The Great Depression strikes. His firm endures, though earnings dwindle. The estate turns into a burdensome expense. Property taxes remain steep. Warming a 3-story stone structure during Michigan's harsh winters demands substantial funds. Salaries for household help must still be covered. Families elsewhere on Woodward experience identical strains. Certain ones divest and relocate to more modern, upscale suburbs. Others repurpose the properties into medical practices, lodging facilities, exclusive social venues. The avenue initiates its gradual evolution. Not a full breakdown as of yet, but initial fissures in the notion that this era will endure indefinitely. Jamal reviews his research notes. This fictional lineage, assembled from historical patterns. The entire Brooks clan is invented, yet their trajectory is authentic. It echoes numerous actual households that erected those opulent homes, anticipating eternal stability, merely to see the foundations enabling such prosperity dissolve. At present, the structures persist. Their exteriors endure, though the society that birthed them is already fading, and the forthcoming fate of the avenue proves far more unforgiving than any guest in those drawing rooms could have foreseen. Chapter 8. Lines on a map. The fissure deepens, the shift accelerates. Grasping the subsequent developments requires comprehending redlining. Jamal uncovers the charts in a digital repository from the National Archives, crafted during the 1930s by the Homeowners Loan Corporation, a government body tasked with evaluating lending risks across U.S. urban areas. Neighborhoods receive color designations. Green signifies prime, blue indicates acceptable, yellow warns of deterioration, red flags peril. Detroit's diagram resembles a quilt stitched by an individual harboring rigid views on who merits financial backing. Affluent northern suburbs shine in green: Grosse Pointe, Birmingham, Bloomfield Hills. These locales see banks eagerly approving loans, anticipating rising real estate values and assured stability. The bulk of Detroit falls into yellow or red categories. Districts with notable black communities invariably get labeled hazardous, regardless of the actual condition of the dwellings. The accompanying reports speak plainly. Infiltration by Negroes or the risk of Negro influx. Such views remain overt. This constitutes official policy. Woodward Avenue cuts through the diagram like a central axis. The segment housing the Holbrook estate appears in yellow, signaling decline, but not outright danger. Annotations reference oversized vintage residences, adaptations into multi-unit dwellings, evolving neighborhood demographics. The consequences emerge swiftly and fundamentally. Lenders refuse standard home loans in red zones. They proceed cautiously in yellow regions. Purchasing property there demands full payment upfront or tolerance for exploitative terms, steep rates, brief repayment periods, looming balloon payments that virtually ensure failure. In contrast, suburban expansion surges. The Federal Housing Administration backs financing for fresh constructions in predominantly white zones. Builders slice farmland into vast communities, embedding clauses that bar sales to black buyers. Legal documents explicitly include racial restrictions. Prosperous Woodward households commence their exodus, not in a frantic rush, but through a persistent outflow. They offload their estates and head to spots like Grosse Pointe, featuring contemporary builds, broader parcels, and assured demographic similarity. In Jamal's recreated scenario, the Holbrook clan clings on beyond the norm. Robert passes in 1938. His spouse remains in the residence alongside their youngest child. The edifice now dwarfs the pair. Numerous chambers go unused. The domestic staff reduces to one cleaner visiting thrice weekly. Come 1945, the son assumes ownership. He toils as a mid-level executive at a car parts manufacturer. Affluent enough, but no longer opulently so. The property burdens him increasingly. Levies climb steadily. The rooftop demands fixes. The aging furnace calls for ongoing maintenance. He opts for a pragmatic solution. He partitions the mansion into rental units. The second-floor ballroom splits into a pair of apartments. The attic servants' quarters yield two more. The expansive ground-level spaces undergo further division, yielding 5 or possibly 6 units altogether. The marble stairway endures. The ornate oak wall panels persist, though the site's purpose transforms. No more a solitary family stronghold. It evolves into affordable lodging for those priced out or excluded from alternatives. Comparable fates befall other Woodward estates. Several convert to workspaces for physicians, dental practices, legal firms. Others morph into tenant residences. A handful transfer to religious institutions or social organizations. A smattering languish vacant, upkeep prohibitive, sales elusive. The avenue's essence fragments. What was once a cohesive realm of affluence, racial uniformity, and centralized influence has transformed into a diverse tapestry of functions and residents. Blue-collar households, African-American families settling into neighborhoods that previously barred them, and modest enterprises. This shift in population echoes the very predictions and enforcements of redlining maps. It's the deliberate machinery of policy at play rather than any abstract erosion or haphazard deterioration. Targeted regulations steer funding away from certain districts while funneling it into others. Those maps etch the boundaries that determine which avenues receive backing and which are abandoned to crumble. Woodward Avenue, the famed Millionaire's Row, falls victim to the unfavorable side of those divisions. The grand homes endure for the moment, yet the resources needed to preserve them flow elsewhere. To sprawling suburbs carved from old farmlands, to newer builds featuring compact but modern dwellings, to zones where financial institutions are willing to extend loans. The boulevard starts its fade, not due to age alone, but because it's been designated for demise. And the darkest chapter looms, Chapter 9. Flames, exodus, and the protracted downfall. The maps lay the groundwork. The 1960s tear it asunder. Jamal navigates this era with particular caution. The events feel recent enough to wound. His grandmother endured them firsthand. His father grew up amid the bleakest moments. The wounds linger visibly in the roadways and among those who remained. The tipping point arrives in July 1967. Jamal avoids dwelling on the unrest proper. That tale has been recounted many times, often poorly, with far more focus on flames engulfing structures than on the roots. Crucial for this avenue, though, are the repercussions. How simmering patterns accelerated abruptly. White departure accelerates into a mass exodus. Households pondering relocation bolt immediately. Those intending to hold on reconsider their options. The outskirts offer security, they assure themselves, superior education, updated infrastructure like streets and plumbing. They seldom voice matters of race directly, yet it permeates every discussion, every decision. Commerce trails the residents. Manufacturing shuts down or relocates to warehouse zones near highways. Stores migrate to fresh malls on the urban fringe. The revenue foundation crumbles. Municipal support deteriorates. The reductions exacerbate hardships, which in turn spur further departures. This narrative isn't unique to Detroit. Similar scenarios erupt in cities nationwide. Yet Detroit bears the brunt more intensely, given its reliance on one dominant sector. And that sector is expanding outward, pursuing cheaper operations, installing robotic systems, and shedding employees. The Hullbrook residence, subdivided into flats, sees its occupancy dwindle. By 1970, just 2 spaces are inhabited. The proprietor, the offspring of the first Hullbrook, struggles to maintain the edifice. The rooftop springs leaks. The antique furnace quits. He makes fixes and stopgaps as possible, but the structure continually outpaces his efforts. In 1973, he offloads it. The purchaser is an investor snapping up troubled assets along Woodward. The plan, in theory, is straightforward. Retain until values recover. Perhaps repurpose for commercial spaces, perhaps raise and redevelop. Recovery eludes them. The home gets carved up more ruthlessly. Vast chambers become individual lettings. The marble stairway, formerly buffed weekly, accumulates grime over years. Intricate oak carvings are coated in bargain bin latex. The ornate glass panes, too expensive to uphold, get removed and replaced with basic sheets. One shatters and gets patched with plywood that stays indefinitely. This isn't an isolated incident. Along Woodward, the cycle repeats everywhere. The Henderson property morphs into a medical outpost, then folds. The Wilson property serves as a care facility for the elderly until fiscal woes compel closure. The Crawford house stands vacant for years before a dubious blaze consumes it. The proprietor had long sought a buyer, and abruptly, there's payout from coverage rather than a worthless ruin. By 1980, the segment of Woodward once known as Millionaire's Row is scarcely identifiable. About half the estates have vanished, supplanted by open lots or patchy emptiness. The rest persist in a sordid disrepair. Solely one, the timber baron's former stronghold, has been salvaged, refurbished, and repurposed as the eatery that still shines come evening. The entire Brook House endures, barely. It has cycled through multiple owners, each acquiring it affordably in anticipation of revival that fails to materialize. The core framework persists. Those 192 foundations were engineered for endurance, but the upper elements unravel. By 1987, the property sits vacant. The final renters depart. The holder secures the panes with boards. Then it lingers. Time slips by. Vandal scrawls appear on the base levels. Youths slip inside via a fractured lower pane. Somebody starts a minor blaze on the upper story. It fizzles before expanding, yet it chars the overhead. Officials mull, tearing it down repeatedly. Yet the grand old house never suffers enough harm to trigger an urgent intervention, and funds remain scarce for anything less than critical. Thus, It endures as a stark emblem of abandonment, this once majestic residence gradually crumbling into decay. This is the very site Jamal highlights during his guided walks. It's not merely a single abandoned dwelling, but the culmination of generations of decisions, ranging from governmental strategies and financial upheavals to intentional determinations on which communities merit protection and which do not. The boulevard, crafted to seem timeless, endured scarcely more than 8 decades before its true unraveling commenced. And today, through a single message and a single initiative, an effort is underway to seal its fate for good. Chapter 10. A flicker of optimism. The compiled information becomes a tool for advocacy. Jamal assembles it all into a cohesive display. Vintage images capturing Woodward Avenue in its heyday. The 1970s architectural assessment, deeming the Holbrook House among the corridor's premier surviving estates. Redlining charts superimposed on current aerial views to illustrate how official measures accelerated the area's downfall. Comparative visuals of the whole neighborhood from past to present. He posts everything on a straightforward site. At the header, he includes a call for signatures. He crafts the accompanying text in his own words, aiming for Catherine's composed and precise tone, while remaining straightforward for those invested in Detroit's fate. Once the wealthiest avenue in the city. Today, just a lone mansion remains on this stretch. Will we allow its demise or offer it another shot at revival? He disseminates the URL across social platforms, in regional heritage forums, and to safeguarding groups throughout the state. The outpouring surprises him. In under 2 days, the petition surpasses 3,000 endorsements. A nearby news outlet airs a brief 2-minute segment on the nightly broadcast, aerial shots of the shuttered estate interspersed with historical glimpses of its glory. A writer for the Detroit Free Press pens an op-ed on the subtle erasure of our built legacy. Then the history side of TikTok takes notice. An individual creates a quick clip featuring his visuals, employing a fade-between eras transition over gentle, wistful tunes. It racks up 500,000 views, soon doubling to 1 million. The remarks that strike Jamal deepest originate beyond Detroit, from locales like Cleveland, Buffalo, St. Louis, and Pittsburgh. Folks from fellow industrial heartland towns who see echoes of their own avenues in this narrative. Aspiring architects chime in. Individuals whose forebears toiled in such homes, or even kin of the original residents along Woodward. My great-grandmother dusted rooms on this very block, one notes. She'd always called them the loveliest structures imaginable. It crushed her when the demolitions began. The signatures swell to 10,000, then 15,000. The figures seem almost dreamlike. Maria reaches out. We're drawing eyes, she notes. That's positive, yet visibility alone won't suffice. A solid strategy is essential. 2 days on, such a strategy materializes from an unforeseen source. A modest neighborhood builder by the name of Marcus Chen reaches out via the Preservation Alliance. Over the last 10 years, he's acquired faltering landmarks around Detroit, transforming them into versatile hubs, humble residences, creative workspaces, boutique shops at street level. His ventures lack glamour, but they succeed. He's not after massive profits. His goal is revitalizing dilapidated areas into vibrant ones. They convene at a cafe close to the Detroit Institute of Arts. Marcus appears more youthful than Jamal anticipated, perhaps in his early 40s, attired in relaxed clothing, clutching a battered leather binder. I've kept an eye on that property for ages, Marcus remarks. I considered acquiring it on 2 occasions, but the finances never aligned. Excessive backlog of repairs, excessive uncertainty. And, currently, Jamal inquires. Now that folks are invested, Marcus responds. Community backing alters the math. He flips open the binder and lays out preliminary designs on the tabletop. Repurposing with sensitivity, he elaborates. We preserve the facade and all salvageable key elements within. The grand stairway, the oak wainscoting, surviving authentic touches. Upper levels convert to living quarters. The base level turns communal. Shared offices, intimate gatherings, perhaps even a cafe. Revenue from leases sustains it while keeping access for all. The illustrations are basic, yet Jamal envisions the transformation. The edifice retains its identity as the Holbrook House, yet pulses with renewed energy. Occupants gliding along the gleaming banister of the marble stairs, sunlight flooding through refurbished panes. "What's the schedule like?" Maria queries. She's arrived too, notepad at the ready, jotting notes on staving off teardown and brokering a sale. Marcus estimates 18 months to 2 years. It hinges on funding sources and discoveries once we inspect the interior. Jamal pores over the renderings. This exceeds his wildest expectations. Beyond mere preservation of its form, it's a pathway to purposeful existence, a role in urban renewal beyond a mere commemorative marker. How can we assist, he wonders. Just some patience, Marcus replies. I require some time to put together the funding and a proper proposal. Could you stall things a bit? Hold off on the teardown until we can put forward a bid that the owner truly considers. Maria and Catherine share a prolonged glance. We might give it a shot, Catherine replies eventually. Great Lakes Storage is gaining speed. They're eager to wrap this up fast. They're relying on things staying quiet. In that case, we'll act swiftly as well, Marcus declares. That night, as the sun sinks behind the structures along Woodward, Jamal strolls the avenue. He pauses before the shuttered estate. For the first time in months, perhaps even years, he permits himself to embrace the possibility that this could really happen. The residence remains hushed. Boards still block the panes. The masonry bears its enduring blemishes and fissures. Yet in his imagination, illumination already glows through the windows. Folks arriving and departing, the marble stairs gleaming once more from meticulous buffing. Heritage safeguarded not as a static display in a museum, but as a vibrant spot for living, laboring, and assembling. The boulevard, recalling its past prosperity and figuring out how to evolve into something superior. Chapter 11. When the ground vanishes beneath you. The gathering is scheduled for Tuesday afternoon. Public input session in the city council chambers regarding the teardown application. Jamal gets there ahead of time, accompanied by Catherine and Maria. Marcus has beaten them to it. He's carrying a portfolio, dressed in a suit for once. They claim spots in the first row. The space gradually populates. A handful of fellow preservation advocates, nearby residents, a journalist from the local station. The councilors enter. The proceedings kick off with straightforward administrative tasks, various other matters on the docket. Initially, a zoning adjustment, a contract for road fixes, budget details and votes. The everyday operations of managing a city in tough shape, followed by Item 7B, the demolition request for 4510 Woodward Avenue. A municipal planner approaches the mic and outlines the essentials. The edifice has stood empty since 1987. It suffers from numerous infractions against building codes. Officials from the department have declared it unstable. Great Lakes Storage Solutions has proposed razing the manor and erecting a temperature-regulated warehouse on the site. The initiative, according to the planner, would bring in taxes and eliminate an eyesore. As the period for public remarks begins, Maria rises. She's prepared. She details the edifice's historic value, references the vintage architectural assessment that highlighted the Holbrook House, notes the petition and the volume of supporters. Next, she presents Marcus along with his plan for repurposing. Marcus displays his drawings, breaks down the economic strategy in straightforward language, states he's ready to submit an official purchase bid for the site if the council allows 60 days to arrange loans and conduct inspections. The council listens courteously. They pose several questions for clarity. Their demeanor isn't antagonistic, yet it lacks optimism too. Then the spokesperson for Great Lakes Storage takes the floor. He's polished, businesslike, nearly understanding. He recognizes the site's past, expresses gratitude to the heritage advocates for their passion. Then he shifts to practicality. The building poses risks. Repair expenses would be astronomical. His firm has sunk substantial funds into designs and technical assessments already, and the city desperately requires income from taxes plus tangible progress on Woodward. He avoids stating it directly, but the implication rings true. Sentimentality is something Detroit can't indulge. The council holds off on deciding. For the moment, they express appreciation to all who spoke and proceed to the following topic. In the chill of the late afternoon outside, Maria's face shows strain and weariness. That didn't land favorably, she remarks. They're bound to greenlight it, right? Jamal inquires. Likely, she confirms. Great Lakes has ties in high places. They've collaborated on city initiatives previously. Without uncovering some advantage we lack right now, this will proceed. Marcus glances at his device, scowls. I've got to reach out to a few contacts. I'll circle back soon. He departs. The casual assurance from the cafe has evaporated, supplanted by the measured assessment of a builder who grasps when the chances have shifted. Jamal heads to his vehicle by himself, steers toward Woodward Avenue, pulls up opposite the manor. The bright warning is posted already, affixed to the barrier. Prominent city emblem up top in large print. Alert of impending demolition. Underneath, a schedule, 30 days. He remains in his car, motor silent, gazing at the structure as dusk settles. All the investigation, the endorsements, Marcus's blueprints, seasons of guiding tours and sharing tales. And it still seems insufficient. His cell buzzes, caller unidentified. He nearly sends it to messages. Jamal, it's your Aunt Patricia. His gut sinks. His aunt doesn't phone for small talk. It's your grandmother, she explains. She took a tumble today. We're at Detroit Receiving. Are you able to head over? He's firing up the ignition without delay. The medical center is in the heart of downtown, roughly 15 minutes distant. He covers it in 10. Within, he locates his relatives in the ER lounge. His father, along with 2 aunts and his younger sister, are there too. His grandmother's condition has stabilized, they explain. A broken hip, possibly additional injuries. The medical team is conducting further evaluations. She's 87 years old now, and at that stage in life, any tumble carries serious risks. He settles into a chair to wait. Harsh fluorescent bulbs hum above. In the distance, a phone softly broadcasts the evening news, covering urban redevelopment plans and fiscal deficits. His father eases into the seat next to him. They remain quiet for a stretch. Finally, his father breaks the silence. Jamal replies. His father gives a measured nod. Quote, "What 17?" Jamal responds, and they lapse into silence once more. Nearby, monitors pulse with beeps and whooshes. Devices drone steadily. The essential equipment sustaining lives within what might once have been a lavish residence, long repurposed as a healthcare center by the urban sprawl. Jamal gazes through the glass at the glittering skyline. Out in the night, the Hullbrook house looms in shadows, its windows barricaded with plywood, a warning sign on the barrier. Poised for the wrecking crew, destined to vanish into yet another vacant plot on a thoroughfare already dominated by voids and faded recollections. He's on the verge of forfeiting both the edifice and his grandmother in the span of a single week, powerless to halt either loss. Chapter 12. A meal amid echoes, not specters. On a rainy Thursday evening, 3 weeks post-hospitalization, and 2 weeks shy of the planned teardown. Jamal's grandmother has returned home, mending at a gradual pace. The procedure on her hip succeeded, though she appears diminished in stature, as though some vital energy lingered behind in the surgical suite. Negotiating steps requires collective support now. Brief strolls exhaust her quickly. On typical days, she perches in her cherished armchair near the pane, observing the surroundings as if committing each element to heart before transformations alter them once again. Jamal realizes he ought to stay close. With her, his father, the entire clan. Yet this evening demands a different refuge, a chance to occupy a structure that triumphed over oblivion. He pulls up curbside on Woodward, braves the dampness as droplets patter against his coat, and heads toward the sole remaining opulent estate on the stretch. The historic abode, now a eatery named the Millionaire's Table. Within, the atmosphere envelops him in coziness. Plaster arches the overhead. The majestic plaster arches the overhead. The majestic stairway sweeps upward to the upper-level eateries, resembling a sculpted oak backbone. They've honored this venue properly. It pulses with vitality rather than stasis. The past unfolds as a venue for dining and dialogue, not a sealed display case. Jamal claims a modest spot in a serene alcove, requests a mug of coffee, and rests with the bill of fare untouched, immersed in his reflections amid the subdued chatter of fellow patrons. A veteran server draws near. Jamal knows him from prior outings. The identical gray locks, the same deliberate poise, the effortless poise of a man who's borne trays and tales across such chambers for years on end. "Tough evening?" the server inquires while placing the mug. "More like a grueling stretch," Jamal admits, the admission slipping free, unvarnished. The server dips his head in acknowledgement as though it fits the pattern. His gaze drifts to the rain-lashed panes, then returns. "You're the fellow advocating for the Hullbrook house." Jamal glances up, caught off guard. "What makes you say that?" "Caught your segment on the broadcast," the server replies. "My relative forwarded the online appeal. Told me, check this out. Someone's working to preserve one of those vintage relics on Woodward." He waves loosely at the surrounding salon. "This spot nearly vanished back in the day too. You know, early 70s. The corporate lessees cleared out. The proprietor couldn't lure replacements. The whole thing molded vacant for nearly 2 years. What turned the tide?" Jamal presses. The server eyes the entry station, gauges the sparse crowd can manage without him, and draws forth the opposite seat. He lowers himself gingerly, like a person whose joints protest but whose dignity won't permit complaint. The evening's languid, and his decision to join seems deliberate, as if he'd anticipated this very inquiry. Quote, 25, he explains. Quote, 26. A subtle grin flickers across his features. Quote, 27. He nods skyward. Quote, 28. Jamal inquires whether they ultimately turned a profit. The server offers a wry grin. Not any time soon. Nearly 10 years passed before the venue ceased hemorrhaging funds, yet the lights remained lit and the structure endured. That outcome mattered most to them. Jamal scans the room once more, envisioning it anew through that narrative, the meticulously revived features, the harmony between aged framework and vibrant renewal, waitstaff gliding among patrons, groups marking anniversaries, pairs on initial outings beneath a roof that withstood nearly 100 years and an imminent demise. The entire Brook house faces demolition, he murmurs gently. In just 2 weeks we battled. We lined up blueprints. We secured a builder willing to gamble. Yet the warehousing firm, flush with cash and influence, seized the opportunity first. The server pauses briefly, considering his response. What I've come to realize from my time here, he ventures at last. You can't preserve it all. Attempting to shoulder every edifice will shatter you. Instead, you safeguard what's feasible. This one's upright. He raps the tabletop softly. Its significance extends beyond enthusiasts of design. It touches every staff member here, every diner, every couple wed in the upstairs hall. They might not grasp the full backstory, but the essence of the spot lingers in their minds. He slides his seat away, preparing to rise. Victory doesn't always mean halting every bulldozer. Often, it's ensuring that after the dust settles, at least one vital element persists, even if only a single estate remains from 24. He resumes his duties, abandoning Jamal with the tepid brew. Beyond the windows, the downpour maintains its persistent patter. Jamal observes raindrops competing along the panes. His mind drifts to his grandmother seated by the sill, scrutinizing her neighborhood with equal focus. He recalls his dad's tales of the homes his granddad electrified, familiar with every concealed conduit and partition, yet always slipping in through side entrances. He reflects on countless evenings along Woodward, gesturing toward voids and declaring, "Something occupied this spot once." Perhaps that's where he's gone wrong, shaping a profession around absence, specters, and faint silhouettes rather than the persistent everyday labor of sustaining the enduring ones. The Holbrook residence is likely past redemption by now. The documents are advancing. The sign hangs on the barrier. Still, other residences, other neighborhoods, other struggles haven't surrendered automatically. Jamal settles the tab and ventures back into the drizzle. He lingers on the pavement, pivoting to absorb the complete exterior of that tycoon's haven, the estate that triumphed, the proof that endurance is achievable if voices remain vocal, audacious, and resolute sufficiently. Opposite, the Holbrook looms shadowy behind its wire enclosure, sealed portals, damp masonry holding firm temporarily. Jamal retrieves his device, navigates his directory. Advocacy networks, reporters, past excursion participants eager for updates. He begins dialing. Should this battle fall, he'll fall swinging, and he'll guarantee that as the barriers ultimately crumble, the metropolis can't feign ignorance of what once rose there. Chapter 13. The Reimagined Millionaire's Row. Those outreach efforts yield an unforeseen path, not a frantic salvation, not a judicial intervention at the 11th hour, but a subtler endeavor potentially outlasting any isolated structure. Catherine greets him in her workspace the following day. The space feels familiar. Stacks of records, faded banners from bygone efforts, yet she exudes unusual vigor. It's the sort of enthusiasm born from decades of incremental triumphs, not flashy conquests. "I've pondered your appeal," she remarks, gesturing to a seat. Those 15,000 endorsements, the heartfelt remarks from folks who cherish these abodes, that's substantial. "It fell short of preserving the edifice," Jamal replies. The admission rings hollow. "Indeed," she concedes. "However, it's sufficient for another pursuit." She flips open her computer and angles it his way. Displayed is a preliminary sketch, an engaging online chart of Woodward Avenue, layered by eras in vibrant hues. Each illuminated point signifies a grand home that graced Millionaire's Row in its heyday. "We create an ongoing repository," Catherine elaborates, capturing every dwelling that existed. Images, layouts wherever available, design specifics, anecdotes from residents, insights from servants, your grandmother's recollections, everything consolidated. Jamal bends in, tracing the street's path visually. Select a marker. A panel emerges with a snapshot and narrative. Tap another. A varied residence, a distinct perspective. "Who's funding this?" he probes. "We are," she affirms, "through the Preservation Alliance. We've squirreled away modest grants for an initiative like this. And once established, educators, scholars, tour organizers can draw from it. It evolves from mere advocacy into an enduring asset." Maria shows up shortly after. still bundled in her coat, juggling 2 coffees and a bulging folder of notes. She places them on the table and slides into a seat. Quote 30, she announces. Quote 31. In the weeks that follow, the initiative starts to solidify. Jamal unexpectedly steps into the role of primary investigator. After all, he's the expert on the avenue, having paced its expanse for years with a mic at the ready. This time he heads back to the archives, driven by a broader mission. Not just arming one battle, but preserving a whole lost era. He logs endless hours at spots like the Detroit Public Library, the Burton Historical Collection, and the Walter P. Reuther Library at Wayne State University. There, he unearths images of razed estates from the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s, verifies their locations, verifies them via fire insurance maps, and overlays their outlines onto the online Woodward layout. Interviews become his next focus, on her brighter days with a lap blanket and a cup of tea going cold nearby. His grandmother shares her recollections into his device. She recalls bumping along Woodward Avenue by bus in the 1950s, nose to the window as the opulent homes glided past. She speaks of toiling in comparable upscale neighborhoods like Boston Edison or Indian Village, bound by rigid, wordless protocols. Entry through service entrances only, steering clear of select areas, gazes downcast around company. She dwells on the petty slights, the rare, genuine warmth, how wealth could render a home stunning yet chilling. Jamal captures it all. Afterward, he slows the playback to half speed, typing meticulously to capture her words. Her accounts will anchor the collection, holding the same prominence as the official building analyses. He also locates heirs of the original Millionaire's Row dwellers. There's a woman in Ann Arbor whose grandfather ran an auto parts firm and hosted lavish winter galas, splashed across the social columns. Or a fellow in California whose great-aunt wed into a Woodward clan, hoarding trunks of correspondence and festive snapshots. They forward digital copies, rigid posed shots on marble stoops, kids in nautical outfits across trimmed grass, embossed invites on thick stock. He connects with survivors from the post-mansion apartment conversions, too. One guy who bunked in the Holbrook house back in 1975 for $40 monthly rent, tuned into the structure's nighttime groans like a weathered vessel battling rough seas. Another, a woman from the 1960s who occupied a partitioned level of the Henderson mansion, turned nurse's lodging. She evokes the leaky panes, communal cooking space, traces of ornate plaster under layers of basic whitewash. Each testimony morphs into a pinpoint on the digital canvas, a tappable link, a narrative thread. Come early spring, the initial rollout hits the web. The design stays straightforward and uncluttered, free of excess. Launch the map, zero in on Woodward Avenue, and select any spot to uncover its past. Side-by-side eras, snapshots, core building details, concise overviews, embedded sound bites, a caregiver recounting her chilly quarters beneath flaking plaster, Jamal's grandmother on pre-dawn commutes, a relative reciting a 1912 missive. Jamal himself captures a guided tour, strolling the pavement phone in hand, lens on vacant parcels and enduring structures, voicing the bygone scenes on either flank. That track powers an audio trail for educators and visitors to trace. Soon, instructors integrate it into lessons. A Detroit high school history group leverages the repository to chart redlining and highway builds, slicing through their kin's districts, kicking off with Millionaire's Row as the template. An architecture instructor at the University of Michigan mandates it as prep for a talk on city decay and repurposing strategies. Regional outlets revive the coverage. Not splashy leads, but a reflective piece in the Detroit Free Press. A 10-minute public radio spot features Jamal and Catherine discussing memory overlays and the gatekeepers of historical narratives. Word ripples outward in preservation networks nationwide. Before long, inquiries flood in from elsewhere. Buffalo with its parallel boulevard, Cleveland's version, St. Louis, Pittsburgh. They probe the site's construction, the interview methods, ways to tweak it for their fading districts. As it happens, the framework proves straightforward to replicate. Basic elements, straightforward framework, and a dedication to capturing every individual's narrative, not merely those of deed holders. Jamal introduces an additional element, contributions from users. Each web page now features a prompt encouraging visitors to share their personal images and recollections. Gradually, the collection expands with family snapshots and audio clips captured over casual meals. The interactive map evolves beyond Jamal's or Catherine's solo effort. It transforms into a collective endeavor, one poised to expand indefinitely even after the Holbrook house vanishes. One night, his grandmother hears her recorded words echoing from the site. The session streams through Jamal's computer. She recounts the gleaming railings, rigid household protocols, and the poignant awareness of strolling by Woodward's grand estates, forever barred from the main doors. "That's meaningful," she murmurs softly as the segment concludes. "Folks need to hear about it all. Beyond the glamorous facets, the full account." Jamal shuts the device and settles next to her. Beyond the window, the soft glow of spring diminishes across their neighborhood. Vehicles rumble by. In the far off, an emergency signal howls briefly, before silencing. The Holbrook house teardown is set for the next week. The notion lingers in his mind. It presses with a familiar ache in his heart, yet the burden feels altered. The disappearance remains tangible, unjust, but it's no longer a total wipeout. Though the structure crumbles, its silhouette endures on the digital overlay. Its tales persist in audio testimonies, visuals, and written entries. The historic row of lavish stone and masonry homes is nearly erased. In its stead, a fresh version emerges, crafted from recollections, information, and resolute attention. Chapter 14. The Building Compromise. The teardown deadline comes, slips by, then looms once more, postponed. Great Lakes Storage holds the approvals. The machinery stands reserved. Officially, preparations are complete. Yet a subtle change ripples through the atmosphere. The online plea, media reports, aerial videos airing on broadcasts, and the grassroots online repository from those determined to witness it all. Jamal receives a phone call from Marcus. "They'd like to discuss," Marcus explains. "From Great Lakes. City authorities are resisting. Your appeal and the publicity have complicated matters. They're inquiring about potential common ground." The discussion occurs in a central business district meeting space. Impartial ground, harsh illumination, bland artwork on the partitions, a serene aquatic image dominating the tabletop. The Great Lakes delegate is the identical polished executive from the council session, though his demeanor has softened. Less assured, more guarded. "We've poured substantial resources into this venture," he states. "We can't just drop it, but we're willing to explore innovative approaches." Marcus arrives prepared for battle. He presents fresh blueprints, pushing them over the sleek surface. "You proceed with your warehouse," he declares, "but you safeguard the mansion's outward face, the entry foyer, the elegant stone steps. Encircle the fresh build around the remnants. Those zones turn into your reception and a modest exhibit-like communal zone. The units slot in the rear and overhead." The Great Lakes official examines the plans, following the contours with a digit. "This raises our building expenses considerably," he remarks eventually. "Perhaps by 15%, Marcus counters. "But you gain eligibility for heritage conservation incentives. You earn positive coverage rather than backlash. And you possess a structure with personality, not another faceless metallic frame." Maria shifts ahead, notebook at hand. "Plus, you sidestep litigation," she interjects. "Since we'll initiate one, though it's flimsy. We realize victory is unlikely, but we could prolong it in the judiciary, stalling your plans for months, possibly a year. It's a blend of feint and fact. The statutes favor them not." But duration does. Postponements drain funds. Backers dislike ambiguity. The bargaining doesn't wrap up immediately. It extends across days, correspondence, updated designs, subtle nudges from municipal leaders eager to dodge fresh controversies. Advocates and secures the primary stairway advocates, and secures the primary stairway too, along with a preserved inner chamber, the old library boasting its etched wooden walls. These components get reinforced, refurbished, and integrated into the updated edifice. The mansion's remainder will be raised. The warehouse rises regardless, but layered over history. The firm also pledges support for an enduring exhibit in the foyer. Oversized images, informative plaques, and scannable links, linking straight to Jamal's online trove. Every visitor storing items will pass by the Avenue's chronicle. It's far from Jamal's ideal, or the vision they all held for a complete revival. Yet it's no complete obliteration. The dismantling starts in early summer. Jamal stops by frequently, positioned beyond the protective barrier with a lens slung over his shoulder. The workers maneuver precisely near the spared portions. Metal supports uphold the front. Support beams reinforce the entryway from within. The grand stairway is encased and safeguarded. The building's remainder is dismantled in precise segments. The roof goes first, followed by the upper levels, and then the dividing walls that had transformed one affluent home into a labyrinth of apartments. Jamal captures it all on camera. The revealed layers of aged walls, the arrangement of support beams and rafters, the instant the roofline gives way to open sky above former ceilings. He also records the meticulous repair efforts, scrubbing the stone clean, filling in cracks, erecting fresh frameworks to bolster the vintage masonry. Each phase contributes to the growing collection of records. The house's conclusion merges into its documented legacy. Come autumn, the blended structure begins to take shape. A contemporary warehousing space now occupies the bulk of the original estate's footprint, yet the landmark facade endures along Woodward Avenue. The foyer illuminates after dark. Beyond the transparent entrance, the elegant marble steps spiral skyward. Initially, the juxtaposition feels stark. Gradually, it turns captivating. A tangible debate, pitting history against the now, with no clear victor. The dedication unfolds on a chilly November day. Speeches ring out. Photographers snap away. Local leaders huddle in overcoats, and nearby folks peer in to inspect what endured. Preservation advocates remain ambivalent about the outcome. Great Lakes has handled the heritage exhibit thoughtfully. Oversized images of Millionaire's Row at its height adorn the walls. Informational displays detail the site's history. What buildings once occupied it, their proprietors, the servants who toiled there, and how discriminatory lending and urban exodus contributed to the avenue's decline. The wording strikes a balance, cautious yet candid. Jamal's online repository permeates the space. QR codes sit below every exhibit for easy access. A compact monitor cycles through video snippets from the oral histories. At one exhibit, speakers broadcast his grandmother's recollections of the mansion glimpsed from her bus route and the upscale homes she tended in upscale neighborhoods. Visitors halt to absorb it, some shutting their eyes in reflection. Kids dash along the refurbished marble stairs, palms gliding over the gleaming banister. Adults pore over the inscriptions. A queue builds at the front counter where folks register for lockers, nestled amid the edifice's narrative. It's an unusual sight, a warehousing center encircling remnants of a lavish-era residence. Business intertwined with reminiscence. Utility paired with sorrow, yet far better than barren ground. Jamal lingers in the foyer, his grandmother beside him. She's steadier these days, gripping her cane, collar fastened high. Her eyes lift to the renovated plaster overhead, to the stairs that withstood flames, neglect, and near demolition. It's changed, she murmurs. Indeed, Jamal replies. It has, though it's still meaningful. She extends a hand, pressing it to the smooth marble. My own mother polished stairs just like these in grand homes. She couldn't have dreamed one of her descendants would stand here, honored for aiding its survival. He traces her stare to a brass dedication plate by the preserved entry and archive, crediting the Detroit Preservation Alliance, Jamal Williams, and local backers. The inscription seems grander than the reality, which to him still tilts toward loss over triumph. A piece preserved, but the majority vanished. Yet 7 days on, during his subsequent guided walk, he avoids pointing at barricaded wreckage or leveled earth. Instead, he ushers the visitors through the doors. He guides them up the steps. Under the antique ceiling, he cues the recorded segments from the files. He highlights the seams where contemporary partitions join ancient stone, outlining the rationale and mechanics of this middle ground. The structure pulses with new life, an altered fusion, transformed from its origins. But no mere void on a boulevard scarred by voids and erasures. That's achievement enough. Chapter 15. What actually remains. Spring returns. Trees bud along Woodward Avenue. Jamal conducts an evening walkabout. 15 participants join, more than typical. Buzz has grown about the repository, the salvaged foyer, the modest success amid a nearly lost lane. They commence at the fused edifice. The party ascends the marble stairs, fingertips brushing the balustrade that spanned 3 eras. They linger by the heritage boards. A visitor inquires about ghosts. Jamal grins, gentler now. Just echoes of the past, he responds. And isn't that stronger? They emerge onto Woodward again and proceed northward. As they traverse vacant parcels, Jamal skips vague waves at the emptiness. He retrieves his tablet, activates the interactive overlay. Images of then and now populate the display. He identifies the former inhabitants. He recounts the tales of the laborers who dusted the interiors, installed the wiring, shaped the landscaping. Masters and help, equally essential. No tale, complete without both. They arrive at the Millionaire's table. The eatery radiates in the twilight. Soft glow from lofty panes. Silhouettes shift in the vintage dance hall above. This structure persisted intact, Jamal notes. Rescued and repurposed back in the 1970s. This demonstrates how these structures can enjoy renewed purpose when advocates battle persistently and fiercely for them. The tour wraps up in its usual spot, yet the atmosphere feels subtly transformed. Jamal no longer concludes on a note of utter defeat. Instead, he extends an open call to action. Once the wealthiest thoroughfare in Detroit, he explains to the group. Much of it has vanished. All that's left are remnants. A set of steps, a dining spot, several ornate panels, images stored in records, tales shared by folks like my grandmother. He scans the expressions in the dimming glow. Pupils, visitors, and suburban residents who made the trek to witness echoes of bygone days. The true grim tale isn't their collapse. Structures crumble in every place, he declares. The deeper shadow lies in how readily we erase their existence, how we overlook those who constructed them, who tended them, who were displaced as fortunes shifted elsewhere. That erasure, he adds, marks the true offense. From the front row, a lady raises her device. Mind if we access the collection? She inquires. Absolutely, Jamal replies. That's precisely its purpose. What comes next is a serene, tender sequence, bathed in soft spring sunlight streaming through revived panes at the Millionaire's table. Laborers on scaffolding. School children on an excursion gathered. School children on an excursion gathered in the safeguarded foyer, absorbing audio from long-past eras via earpieces. Educators mapping lineages on vintage redlining charts, illustrating for the young how those hues molded their urban landscape. Kids gliding fingers over stonework sculpted prior to their ancestors' lifetimes. Additional safeguarded zones in Detroit, like Boston Edison and Indian Village, where full stretches endured, thanks to timely designations as landmarks. Artists updating railing details, horticulturists trimming overgrown blooms from eras past. Subtle, persistent efforts that prevent the past from fading to oblivion. Jamal logs one last notation for the repository. His tone remains calm and deliberate. Not every element was preserved. He notes, "We held on to portions. For the moment, that must suffice, given what's available." He halts briefly, selecting his words thoughtfully. The inquiry extends beyond a single avenue in Detroit. It concerns our selections in memory and whose legacies endure. The affluent lineages, certainly, but also my grandmother aboard the transit. My great-grandfather laboring within the frameworks, stringing cables. All those whose labor shaped these edifices into tangible reality. The closing scene. Twilight along Woodward Avenue. The composite edifice illuminated from inside, its vintage masonry facade enduring beside a modern glassy form. The eatery opposite shining like a beacon. In the gaps between, vacant parcels where saplings emerge from the earth, gradually retaking ground once occupied by grand estates. And along the pavement, a modest cluster strolling with devices aloft, tracing the virtual guide, tuning into history through their audio sets, gradually grasping the full price of each opulent domain ever erected, and the significance of safeguarding even a sliver of its narrative.